Senator Kennedy called health care reform the cause of his life. Just last week, his son Patrick said his father was frustrated that he couldn't be in Washington for that ongoing debate. Let's bring in David Gregory, moderator of Meet the Press, and NBC's Andrea Mitchell and Kelly O'Donnell. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Matt. We just heard Ron Ellen talk about Senator Kennedy's endorsement of Barack Obama during the primary campaign in 2008. So let me ask you this, and Andrea, I'll start with you. I want you to talk about Senator Kennedy's real political power, and then, David, I'll go to you with his aura and what surrounded him. Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, first of all, the real political power was the fact that he was a legislator. Having decided after 1984, in fact, when he thought briefly about running for president again, that he never would be president, he turned to the Senate. And he became the greatest senator of our generation in either party because he was able to make deals with Orrin Hatch, with Trent Lott, with Republicans, and even working a little uncomfortably with some Democrats like Jimmy Carter when he was president, who was much more conservative than Teddy Kennedy. So as the legislator, he was the greatest man in the Senate. But then he had the torch. He carried the flame of the Kennedy legacy, and that is what we saw passed to Barack Obama. That was such a powerful moment in the campaign. It came after the South Carolina victory. It came at a moment when we saw the Caroline Kennedy endorsement in the New York Times, and then that great moment for Obama and for Kennedy as they had the passing of the torch to this young man who was not a Kennedy, but was clearly the man that they had chosen, that Ted Kennedy had chosen to carry on the legacy at the great event in Washington at American University.
Yeah, David, it's impossible to calculate the impact of that aura, isn't it?
It really is, and you talk about it in terms of that endorsement. Ted Kennedy said to Barack Obama, I'm going to endorse you, but you got to make me a promise, and that is that health care is the #1 thing you do. And President Obama has said it would have been #1 if not for the state of the economy, and it came in right behind it. So Senator Kennedy has a lot of force, and that aura on Capitol Hill mattered. He was not only a voice of moral authority on health care, a cause he took up back in 1966, just 4 years after he becomes the United States Senator. But it was also something that transferred to what Andrea talked about, the ability to work with Republicans, to get a Republican on board. And I have talked to allies in this health care fight now who say the void is huge without Senator Kennedy in this fight day to day. The ability to get some kind of grand bargain is something that has proved elusive thus far. A lot of people think that Ted Kennedy would have had much better odds in delivering.
Yeah, but people, and Kelly, I'll bring you in on this. People talk about his ability to reach across party lines, but the fact of the matter is he was a real partisan. He was an absolute liberal, and yet people talk about him not hating, not spewing venom, and then you go back to some of the speeches and comments he made on the war in Iraq and on the Bork nomination. They were very pointed and harsh, weren't they?
Very hardened views, but what you learn from other senators is it was the personal touch that Ted Kennedy was able to connect with his colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats, on many important days and on many ordinary days. They say he was always the first to be on the telephone if a fellow member lost someone in their family, suffered a tragedy, because he understood that. He would even do simple things like carry a plate of cookies or cigars to a colleague to try to nudge them along. Not send a staffer, but to go himself. Small gestures, personal contact, making those connections at all different times. And he had a great sense of timing when he would know how to push a colleague and when to come back and try to compromise. So in the big terms that you've heard Andrea and David talk about, it was also the quiet, private moments that made those connections.
And Andrea, briefly, if you possibly can, how did he manage to kind of transition? In the post-Chappaquiddick years, he developed a reputation. It wasn't a very positive reputation as a hard-drinking, perhaps even womanizer, and yet later in his life he was known as a statesman. How did he make that transition so successfully?
Vicki Reggie Kennedy, his second wife, transformed his life. And with his children, his extended family, because he viewed them as his own children, her 2 children, he lived a new life. He was at soccer games. He was at school. He became a completely transformed human being. She is a great hero in his life.
All right, Andrea, David, and Kelly, we appreciate your time this morning very much.